Okay, my industrial background is construction and civil engineering, and I can say that the HS2 is flawed in many ways. The consultation process has given documentation which is inaccurate, and there's data in there which doesn't marry up with what they're actually planning to do. Now, how it affects Ruislip in particular, because that's an area that I've lived for 30 odd years, and one of the main areas that it's due to come through, main residential areas it's due to come in, is on several factors. One is on costs. The initial cost of the government plans is 17 billion. That's roughly £1,000 per household throughout the country, as well as 51 million per local authority. That's an awful lot of money for a system that actually is saying that it can only decrease the journey by 20 minutes. Much of the Ruislip area will be affected, not only because of loss of properties. In their consultation document they state a maximum of 10. Because of my background, I've actually walked and done a topographical survey of that stretch, which clearly shows it's closer to 50 houses and bungalows that will probably have to be demolished, with lots more having land take as well. What also will affect the Ruislip area for 2 or 3 years during the construction is the loss of roads and access into and out of Ruislip, Northwood, Ickenham, Uxbridge, because of the A40 being the main link for building works. What many people are not aware of is that this is a major route for Ruislip. And by shutting off the roads and the bridges for the building works, although they say they can do it in a short period of time, maybe 3 days, they still left to shut. And they have said that they will probably, if they're not crossing out, the opportunity of doing the work at night as well. There is the added factor as well of where they're going to put the construction zones. That's the zones where they're going to do the building work. They've clearly said they're not going to bring it up by rail, so they're going to have zones. And one of the areas in Ruislip will probably be the park areas, green areas that we've already got. So it would be the loss of those as well. So I think there's a lot of arguments for why we should be challenging HS2. It's the cost, as I said, not only because of the cost of the 17 billion, but it's the loss of communities, the cost of that as well, the cost for stress of individuals within not just Ruislip but throughout the stretch, because it will come from Euston, underground, via tunnel to Old Oak, and then come above Old Oak through to Denham, and then go via viaduct. But that's all built up areas, residential as well as industrial and commercial. And that's a problem for us all, not just in where I live in Ruislip, but across all of London.
Do you think the costing and the time they say it's going to finish them is very optimistic?
Yes, I do. Yeah, because much of their costing, as previously with the M25 is a good example. When they finished the M25, they'd already said that it was out of date, and it already cost several billion more than they had anticipated. It would be the same with HS2 because they're planning a 2-track system, but although they've not denied it, they're looking at their calculations for when it goes to a Y structure. It's likely to come into a 4-track in the next few years after it's built, although it's planned to start its first one in 2013. It's also a point that some of their costings are done on anticipation of passengers. At 4 minutes, a train every 4 minutes. Every 4 minutes between 6 in the morning and 12 in the evening. That's 14 trains one way and 14 trains the other per hour, fully loaded with 1,000 passengers. I don't know any train company runs that amount of passengers on a regular basis, 7 days a week, for that amount of time. So their figures just don't add up.
In a previous interview, a questioner said even the French TGV cannot run so many trains an hour.
That's right. And also the latest news is about Eurostar, the British one, where that's already losing money, and the government is now selling it off to a foreign company because it's costing so much money to actually run it. It's running a deficit, so they're now selling it off. And that's why I think will happen with HS2. I'd like to point out, I'm not against progression, and I'm not against high-speed trains. What I am against is the poor use of public money and fundings, and the loss of communities when there are alternative routes. So my summary is that HS2 is flawed on many accounts. One is the consultation process, the documentations, the lack of documentations and accuracy of documentations is flawed. The cost is flawed. Their anticipation of numbers and passengers is flawed. And that's why I think HS2 must stop.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.